thanks for joining us for this second video this week. This is our post show in the old podcast world, but just a second video for us here. And
Right.
we're going to talk about day one in journaling. Now, I've been doing some sort of journaling, like gratitude entries every day for a couple of years at least now. And then weekly journal entries, almost weekly, for about that same amount of time. So that's kind of my background, wanting to document experiences. And I don't know whether my kids would ever want to read it or anything like that. But Jason, do you do any sort of journaling?
No, so, and you got me interested in it. And, we talked about journaling in the past, even before, the journaling app with iOS and day one and stuff. But, I never got around to and never done anything like that in my life. Now, I did realize the power of writing down goals and stuff a few years back. After talking to a few people and starting a business and things like that, I realized the power of putting your thoughts into writing and stuff like that. So I think that it could only be a good thing, if I do decide to go down the road and start journaling and stuff like that. But we talked about it before, and I just never got around to doing it. Never chose an app, never put anything down.
I have been writing a lot lately. I've been using
When did you start? When did you start?
I mean, I'd have to go back and let me see if I've got it. So I started in OneNote. Let me see if I can.
But it was as an adult, not like you didn't start this in college or something like that.
I mean, I would have had.
Or on your mission or anything.
Well, we did do a little bit of journaling on missions.
Okay.
But I mean, like I've got a journal notebook from 2020 in OneNote. But it's been in the last decade, really, that I got into doing it consistently. I mean, I used to do some paper journals and stuff like that at one point, but never anything like this. So, but this concept of putting things down on paper, I'll talk about it in a little bit, but I've been doing not just short journal entries. Like I'll be struggling with something in my mind and I'll just sit down and I'll open journal entry and just start typing, and I do long form. And sometimes I'll hand it to my wife because I want her to understand what's going on in my head. Most people should never, ever, ever want to know what's going on in my head, but she's married to me, so she doesn't have a choice. So
right. She doesn't know how to process those things. Yeah.
So, I started with OneNote, and then I've used Apple's Notes, and then, Apple released their own journal app, and they've got the API, which is a big deal. So just to recap those two things, and this is where I would recommend anybody start. If you've got an Apple iPhone, just download the Journals app and start there.
Right.
Because you're going to go in, and it's going to prompt you and say, hey, you went, we took the kids to Olive Garden on Saturday for lunch, and so it prompted me and say, hey, do you want to write about this? And so I did. And if you take any photos, it's going to pull them in. And like yesterday, we had some church leaders there, and they handed out magnets. And instead of me keeping the magnet, my wife has it. I just took a picture of it, straightened it out, and all that kind of stuff. And then I was able to put it in my notes from church because it's a photo that I took. And so it's automatically doing that. So Apple's Journal app will prompt you to do that. But it's super, super, super simple. It would not be conducive for long form writing, partially because it's only on the iPhone. It's not anywhere else, right? And even with day one, which is what I'm using now, the prompts that it has don't show up on the Mac or the iPad. They only show up on the iPhone. So the API is not crossed there. So that's where I would recommend folks start. But I purchased an app called Day One. It's been around for a long time. It's actually a Utah company. They got bought. And the company that bought them really has left them alone and just kept funding them. And
which usually works best when it comes to technologies. Let the people work. Give them the money, let them work.
And I'm paying for the subscription. I think it was $35 for the year. I'm paying for it because I can have an unlimited number of journals. Right. So if I were to pull it up right now, I have a gratitude journal. I have a placeholder journal, which is kind of cool because if you just randomly throw something in, or I can send a text message and it will drop something in there, or an email, it'll drop something in there. So it's kind of a placeholder, and then I move things out of there to where it belongs. But I've got a gratitude journal, my weekly journal, which is when I write on Sundays, a daily journal. I've got one for work thoughts, and then for some other personal stuff, just things to think about. Right. So it really has become kind of my note taking app. But I can have, because of the subscription, I can have an unlimited number of journals. As a premium user, I can create shared journals that non-premium users could share into. So
Okay.
like I could use this. We're using Notes to deal with all of our transition stuff that we're working on right now, selling the house and that kind of stuff. But I could, in theory, do a journal there. I get tags, and I get the synchronization and backup across all my devices. And then I think I even get a discount if I decided I wanted to print a book, right? Of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So,
So
but
before you move
yeah.
on, multiple journals. So what are you using multiple journals for? Like you have one for your church stuff, one for like selling the home,
So that's what I
stuff, or
no what I've got. So I've got all my gratitude entries are in a single journal.
okay,
So I can click on that right now and I can see 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, right? So I can see all of those in a single location. My
Okay.
weekly journal is going to be 7 days apart because I do it on Sundays. And then my daily journal is where I respond to the prompts. I put my study notes from the morning, anything else like thoughts that I have. Like I've got one in here that's there. I had a thought about quiet quitting, which is an enterprise phrase that's going on right now. And so I just have thoughts. I just drop them in there. But I guess really I wouldn't need those. I could label them because you can put subject lines and stuff like that. And I can put tags like keyword tags in, which
Okay.
I'm doing pretty extensively, especially in my study notes and stuff like that. But those are
Okay.
all those are reasons that I do it. Plus the synchronization across all my devices, right? If you just have a phone and only want a single journal, you may not need that kind of stuff. They will put
Right.
limits on the number of photographs you can have in there, of the amount of media that you can store and stuff
right,
like that,
because it
which
grows
totally
the file
makes
size.
sense.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
You can make it
Yeah,
too
yeah.
large to manage. Yeah.
But for $35 a month, I mean, it totally made sense. It totally made sense to me
Right.
to do this. So here's from their website. When you do premium, let's see, unlimited access. So unlimited photos, unlimited videos, unlimited audio recordings, unlimited devices, unlimited journals, voice to text transcription, custom colors, email entry, text entry, all of those kinds of things. Those are all going to come with premium. So
Okay.
you can do PDF embedding, you can do drawings, you can use the camera to scan for text. You can automate your entries. Like I could save all of my Instagram posts right into day one
Okay.
if I wanted to do something like that too. So plus then you can customize all the reminders, how often you want them, and you get 25% off of any books that you want to print. So
Okay.
those are the premium features.
So it makes it like we talked about earlier with the devices and stuff. So the value that you're getting by paying for the subscription puts it well above just using the default
Yep.
Apple journaling app. Okay, and that
Yeah,
makes
I mean,
a lot of sense.
I do long form on the Mac. I'll do the daily, because I have a reminder set at 8 o'clock in the evening to do my gratitude entry and to respond to any of the prompts that come up. And I do that on my phone because usually I'm laying in bed at that point, watching something or doing something. And so I'll just grab my phone and
Right.
do that there. But for the other stuff, I'm using the Mac for the long form entries. Now, if I get an iPad Pro with a keyboard or even an iPad Air with a keyboard, I'll probably start doing the long form
Okay.
there. The Mac app is not the greatest. It seems like it's pretty, generic and straightforward. So
But it's built to be a mobile app, which is usually
Yeah,
first,
yeah, yeah.
right? We saw that shift
Yep.
years ago where people shift from desktop apps to the mobile app
Right.
being the focus and the desktop app
Yep.
being more of a secondary.
Yep.
So before we move on to, are there any other subscription levels? Like, are you on the entry level, the mid tier, or is there just one subscription and you get all of the feature set?
nope, that's it. So you're
Okay.
either entry level and you can do it. I think it's like 2 journals or something like that, or you
Is that
go
the
up
free
to the
level
premium.
or?
Yeah, free.
Okay.
Yep. And there is a free month trial for the premium.
Okay.
So, now you can also do $2.90. It's like $3 well, it comes out to just under $3 a month, right? But they only have an annual subscription. There may be some other things that are in the in-app purchases, stuff like that, but this just made,
Yeah.
I just spent the money. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's also available on iOS, Android, and Mac. So if you did have an Android device mixed in here, you get that. It's also on the Apple Watch, where you can do quick entries and stuff like that too. So here's the bigger part. So this is the non-technical piece of this. This is why I think journaling is important, and why I think it's more powerful than maybe people give it credit. One, you can get your thoughts on paper, right? And if you like to actually write and you have an Apple Pencil, you can write and it'll transcribe it to text, or you can actually do the drawing mode, right? And actually put in your own terrible, I can never do my handwriting because I can't read it. So you can do that. You can put in drawings and stuff like that. So getting your thoughts out on paper. The long form stuff that I've been doing becomes a form of brainstorming, right? As we're trying to think of this transition to a different part of Utah and maybe a different career path for me. And then there's what does my wife do for a job? And, all of these different kinds of things. You know me, the way my brain works, there's just so many paths and so many thoughts going through my head that being able to put it down in long form works. And I don't know why, I just seem to like to write. When I go into notes, I tend to bullet things and make it outliney. When I go into day one, for whatever reason, I tend to just write.
Okay.
And so it's more narrative, it's more long form, and that is much more helpful to me, and it actually becomes sort of therapeutic. If I'm super stressing about something, I can get it down on paper, and I come to the end and I write, this is why I shouldn't stress about this. There's something about having written that down and gone through that process, putting it into digital format, right, that helps me work through that. And I would never do this on paper because my handwriting's terrible and I don't like to do that. But if I can just sit down with a keyboard, then I'm willing to do that. So this has been therapeutic for me, brainstorming, getting my thoughts on paper, and then working through problems and potential solutions. And then I have it, right? I don't have to think, okay, yesterday, what in the world was I thinking? Well, I can go back and read. And because I'm doing more long form, I've got more of the context versus just, here's the bullet point. And I could look at a bullet point. Like I did this the other day. I looked at a bullet note that I had for something and I went, what in the heck was that all about? And couldn't figure it out because there was no context around.
So, we mentioned earlier too, how, we've used a certain app or a certain device in a certain way for so long, for so many years, that it's hard to figure out a different way to use it, right? Or they add new features in. And even though the Notes app has become really powerful, from what it was. Remember, it was just basically a post-it note on the phone. I see you're still having a problem with that transition, trying to go to using it for something more than just outlining notes or sticky notes, like as we used to call them on the monitor on your screen.
I've got 2 years worth of journaling in there.
Right.
So I do have entries, but I never used. So yes, my weekly Sunday entries I did in there. My gratitude journal I would do in there. But I never did this brainstorming, writing as therapy sort of thing, working through problems, long form kind of stuff. I just, for whatever reason, I couldn't or didn't do it there. And I don't know why.
So you found it easier to transition over to this one to do stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just some sort of a shift that's happened. I don't know. I've heard people talk about the Vision Pro, how they've started to associate certain environments that they dial into, like Joshua Tree or Haleakala or whatever, right?
Right,
that they've started to do certain activities with those environments dialed in, and now it's got a trigger in their brain that says, okay, I'm looking at Joshua Tree now. I need to be writing an article.
Right.
And
I can see that.
Yeah, maybe there's something that, or maybe if I had the month subscription, right? Or the month free trial. And I wanted to see if I was really, really, really going to do this. And so I was putting all kinds of stuff in there. Anytime I wanted to write about something, I thought, let me see if I can put it in day one.
Right.
And so maybe that's what pushed me over the edge. Apple's app is free. It's never going to go anywhere, right? I don't have to worry about it.
It's only going to improve. They're going to add in features and stuff. Yeah.
So I think maybe I did that and it just got me over the hump, right? Got me across that line that said, okay, now I can do all of this kind of stuff. So, so I like it. If you are, if you're thinking about getting into journaling, start with Apple's Journal app. If you
Yeah.
want some of these other benefits that I'm talking about, I'd suggest you find another tool. Now, Day One's what I've chosen to go with. I'll go with it at least for this year because I'm paying for it. Maybe longer term, I'll go back and pull key experiences out and want to put them into a journal and have a book printed, and I can do that through this and all that kind of stuff. But if you really just want to be able to get your thoughts out into something, I really like the way
Right.
Day One does it. I have other things I want to do with it. So right now, when I do my morning study, I'm marking things in the app on my iPad. I'm putting some things in. I'm putting they're not quite as deep notes in Apple OneNote, like about a certain verse of scripture or something like that, right? I'm just putting what I understand that verse to mean. But
Yeah.
in Day One, I'm putting my thoughts. How does this apply in my life? What could I do with this, right? How could this make my life better, kind of stuff. Eventually, I want to pull notes out,
Right.
right, and not have to put it in three places. Now, the nice thing about putting it in three places is that it really reinforces the learning, right? I mean, that happens with anything. It doesn't have to be whatever you're learning. It'll really reinforce it. But I'd like to get out of that stuff, out of notes. I'd like to do the shared journals at some point, right? And kind of like shared photo albums. I think that would be kind of cool for, if we're we're going to try and do a 2-week anniversary trip this year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind having a shared journal where both Karen and I are putting in our experiences and cool things that happened during the day and pulling the photos and everything all into a consolidated place. I can get the photos into notes, but it's not nearly as easy to do that. So those are some of the things that I'm hoping to try out and do with it as we go through the rest of the year.
So, if someone were to ask, what should I be journaling? Right. And I know this post show is about your experience and we're talking about you, but we also want people to maybe consider going down this road. What should somebody be journaling?
Easiest thing are key moments in life, right? Important events or big things, and we usually take photos and that kind of stuff, which is again why I love Apple's Journal app or Day One, is that if I took that photo of that key moment, I can pull it in, right?
Yeah.
Like when we went to Rodizio, which is my favorite restaurant, we took the whole family there for Christmas, right after Christmas, right? I took a picture of everybody at the table. And so the prompt was, hey, here's this picture you took. And so I was able to write, this is what we went to. And, it's my granddaughter's favorite restaurant now, too. And she ate 3 chicken hearts, which I found amazing that this 5-year-old was eating chicken hearts.
Right.
And ate 3 of them. Didn't just eat one and say, yeah, it was fine, but ate 3 of them, kept asking for them. I can write about those kinds of things. So I think those big moments in our lives. The other thing that I would suggest people think about are those thoughts that you don't want to lose, the thoughts that you want to save for later, and those things that you're trying to work through that maybe you don't have somebody to share everything with. I mean, I share as much as I can with my wife, but sometimes I need to work through things in my head, right?
Yeah.
Before I'm ready to talk to somebody about it. And so I kind of wonder what it would have been like if I had had this when my mom and dad passed, right?
Yeah.
What would the prompts have prompted me to do and to do some of that kind of stuff? So key events in life, key thoughts that you have, and then things that you want to work through that you want to put down on paper or save for later, those kinds of things. I think those are the 3 things that I think people should start with. And honestly, I think if you start with Apple's prompts, you'll start thinking of other things that you want to include. Now, the last one maybe that I'll do, and there's a psychologist, psychologist, psychiatrist, I don't know which one he is, but Sean Akor, he's got an amazing TED Talk, and he talks about happiness. And one of the things he talks about is that our brains are actually wired for negativity, and they're wired for fight or flight, right? To avoid danger, all of those kinds of things.
They always take the easiest, the path of least resistance.
Yep.
And things. Yep.
So one of the things he talks about is if you want to realize how good your life is, start writing down 3 things that you're grateful for, or 3 things that are happiness focused every single day. And if you do that long enough, 28 days to start a habit, right? But if you do that long enough, it actually starts to retrain your brain. to look
Right.
for those things, because you don't want to get to the end of the day and think, "Oh, I can't think of anything," right? So eventually it retrains your brain to start looking for the positive.
Yeah.
And so that's another potential benefit of doing this, which is why I have multiple journals, right? I write my gratitude stuff in the um, in the gratitude journal. I put my daily entries, which includes prompts and study notes and anything I can think of during the day that I want to do later. I put
Yeah.
that in the daily journal, and then my weekly journal entries, which are just one a week. I sum up some of that other stuff. So I'm going back through those other entries and writing this stuff down, and that may give me different insights. And, you know, here's the thing, not to get off on too much of a rant, but I think too many people aren't deliberate about their lives.
Right.
And if you listen to Leaders Lift, which I know you did, I probably use that word deliberate in every single episode that I publish. But I think too many people just go through life, right? They aren't
Yep.
deliberate about the past, like you said, writing down your goals. But it's not just about your goals; it's about what happened today and how do I make tomorrow better than today was. And if you journal and gratitude and do some of these things and document some of this kind of stuff, you're much more likely to think about it and be deliberate about it versus just letting it go,
Yeah.
right?
Go
So
with the flow. Yeah. I always hear people say, "I just go with the flow." No, that's no way to live.
no, and you know the other thing, and sometimes we get caught up in this too, is the you do you is okay if you're being deliberate about who you are, right?
Right.
And what you want to do. If you're just going to say, I'm just going to be whatever my environment or nature or whatever makes of me, that's not why we're here, right?
Yeah.
We are here to be our best selves, to get the most out of life. So to me, journaling is a way that I get more out of life than I would if I didn't.
I see that, like you say, people who aren't deliberate and the ones that just go with the flow. I see it every week with I call them coworkers. These are other small business owners or whatever that I'm at an event with. And so many of them are there for the wrong reasons or don't even know why they're there. They're just there because they think I just need to make extra money, and they're not deliberate about anything. Even if you don't want to journal with your personal life and your personal experience or your thoughts and feelings, at least do it from a business standpoint, right? Talk about or journal about where you are currently in your journey for your company or your business or whatever. Thoughts that you want to have. And yes, those goals and stuff and where you want to be in the future, but how are things making you feel now? How do you feel about the current point that you're in your journey, now? Start journaling things like that. And then look at it in 5 or 6 years or next year or however long it takes and say, okay, this is how I was feeling at that point in my life. And it may help you get through that next point or that next, that next obstacle or things like that. So, yeah, I think journaling, not only from in your personal life, but from a business standpoint, would help out a lot of my coworkers, other small business owners and things like that. So, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. What else do you think you
I'll
can?
just to wrap up, I'll put a link to episode 44 of Leaders Lift. It was on the power of journaling.
Right.
I'll put that in the show notes. The other thing I would say is I am trying to use journaling as a way to not overthink things. So,
Okay.
I have a tendency to do that.
We
I have a
both do.
tendency to want to have the perfect plan and every single contingency in place, right? And to know that everything's going to work out. And so I'm also trying to use journaling as a way to push some of that aside because I need to do a little more go with the flow, and be a little less deliberate in my own life. And if you were to read through some of my journal stuff, you would do that. The other night, Karen said for one of my journal entries, says, "Boy, your brain was busy," and
She would know.
that can be taken to extremes too. So, anyway, so that's what I'll leave. I'll put that link in there. Check that out, but don't go nuts with this either, right? You don't need to spend
Right.
all day journaling. And like I said, I do long form entries when I have something in particular to do, but most of the time my day's entries are just the gratitude stuff, my study notes from the morning, and maybe one or two of the suggestions if we did something cool that day, right? And then my Sunday is the time for me. I probably take half hour, 45 minutes every Sunday to kind of work through that entry.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's where I think I'd leave that. So,
Okay. Well, yeah. No, thanks for sharing that, and I can think of several people that I'm going to share this video with, and yeah, just being able to, it's, especially attaching photos and stuff to it, it gives you context to, not only seeing that memory, but how you felt in that moment and things that were going on and their thoughts at that moment. It gives more of a context to a lot of these pictures and stuff that we take, because everyone takes pictures with their phones. They're at dinner, snap a picture or whatever, but whenever you're ever going to look at that picture again, and yeah, if it's included in your journal or something like that, it'll give you a reason to think back and to remember where you were at that point, as far as your headspace and stuff. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really cool.
All right, everybody, thanks again for joining us for the 2 tech grumpy grandpas. Hopefully, journaling for me will help me be less grumpy. And until next week, thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe, follow, all that kind of stuff, and share this with others, and engage with us in the comments. We'd appreciate it.
Yep. See you next week, guys.